Talking about for a while. Fox News alert. In just 3 hours from right now, President Trump, out in the Rose Garden, will declare a national emergency over border security, and then he's going to sign that major spending bill.
Congress passing the measure overnight. That's the one the House and Senate passed overwhelmingly in the hopes of stopping another government shutdown. So it was successful, but it doesn't end there.
Kevin Corke joins us live from the White House, where the president will address the nation. Kevin?
Good morning, folks. You're right. This will be a very interesting opportunity for the president, not just to talk about his mindset behind calling and declaring a national emergency. It's also very important to talk about how he intends to get money to fund national security, border security, and, of course, building a wall along our southern border. Let me share some numbers. We talked a great deal over the week about how the president would move money from different pots to try to achieve his ultimate goal. That is, come up with $25 million, give or take $25 billion, that is, to fund border security. As we take a look inside the numbers, you get a sense for what he is really going to try to do. He's going to claim $8 billion for the border wall, $1.375 billion for the border security compromise, which we talked about yesterday. That is part of the bill. There's also $3.5 billion that he intends to claim out of the DOD's military construction budget to, again, create that border barrier. Another $2.5 billion of the DOD's drug interdiction program, and for good measure, $600 million out of the Treasury's drug forfeiture fund. Again, trying to collect as much as he can from different pots in the government to, again, secure the border. Now, the White House, as you can well imagine, has been talking about this idea that we have to do something if congressional lawmakers won't. Sarah Sanders had a statement yesterday. I want to read part of it. And she said this: President Trump will sign the government funding bill. And as he has stated before, he will also take other executive action, including a national emergency, there it is, to ensure we stop the national security and humanitarian crisis at the border. You may have heard Nancy Pelosi say plainly yesterday, you do this now, be careful. A Democrat president might decide to do something similar in the future. But that's not stopping the president, because he says this is a real crisis that has to be tackled right now. Of course, it's coming up at 10 a.m. We'll have live coverage, but for now, back to you.
All right. Thanks for explaining the numbers, Kevin. So the president's going to make this really easy. And I think his base understands he's going to probably say, look, I've been trying 4 months. I've been working for 2 years with Congress to try to do something. And I haven't been able to get as much as I've wanted to. I've listened to the lawyers. I personally feel I can get this $8 billion out of money that has already been appropriated from Congress for various reasons, for drugs and military, and use it right there. You sent me to Washington to do something about the southern border. This is it. Will the Democrats take him to court? Only if Jerry Nadler, who's going to immediately file a resolution of disapproval, only if that fails in the House and then the Senate. It'll probably pass the House, but then it could actually pass in the Senate, because there are some Republicans who do not like the fact that the president is going to declare a national emergency.
Well, as soon as the president said national emergency, almost instantly he was met with some fierce criticism by the Democrats. Listen.
Declaring a national emergency where there is no national emergency is not good for the president to do.
Declaring a national emergency would be a lawless act.
I think all of us will come to regret this. It is not the right way for the president to try and end run Congress.
If it was an emergency every time a president of the United States couldn't get what they wanted from Congress, we would be in a constant state of emergency.
We fought the Revolutionary War not to have King George or a successor. And this is the actions of a king. And no matter which route he takes, it'll be challenged in the courts.
He is. It's called the 1976 rule that's been used multiple times in order for a president to take action in state of emergency. And you can always challenge in court, like President Obama did when it came to immediately declaring all the DACA kids who are now young adults can stay here. The problem was with the $1.375 billion that for his border fencing, border barrier, bollard fencing, there were so many limitations to it. The president was beside himself. We have to confer locally if we want to build a wall near the Butterfly Park, anywhere near the Lomita Historical Park, near the Wild Refuge. So not only did he not getting enough money, he is actually getting money so restricted that they were going to have wall challenges through the 55 miles.
Look at that, Brian.
Yeah, as we look at the presidents there, you see how many times that Bill Clinton used to stay. 17 times George W. Bush 13 times. But what the president has done here is he basically said this: Nancy Pelosi, for 35 days you would not negotiate with me. I stopped your plane because you wouldn't negotiate with me. You still still didn't negotiate with me. So I go back because you told me to negotiate fairly. I saw what you gave me. I read it. I'm outraged by it. I almost ripped it up. Called Mitch McConnell, said, I'm not voting for it. Tell everybody. McConnell talks him off the ledge. Then he says, you just make sure everybody knows that I'm putting the state of emergency out there. And Mitch McConnell goes, okay, I'll back that, Mr. President. So you would think he would.
Look, if you were the president and you looked at the bill that Congress handed him, it's a stink bomb. It does not really have nearly the amount of money he wanted, and it is so restrictive. But that's why he's going to do the state of emergency. Apparently, he was leaning against the bill. His attorneys were saying, let's just reprogram money. The state of emergency is way too complicated. Brian, an hour ago, talked to Jonathan Turley, who was representative of the House of Representatives in past. What does he say about the state of the emergency that the president is going to declare in 3 hours? He said this.
The important thing is if Congress goes in front of the court and says, we want you to stop this, the court's going to say, whoa, whoa, whoa. You, first of all, gave this authority to the president without many conditions. You gave this money without many limitations. But more importantly, when you pass this act, you gave yourself the right to rescind it, to reject it. And so you're coming to me to do something that you could do, but you don't have the votes.
So Jonathan says that the House should not bring up this lawsuit. It should be people on the border or somebody else to bring it forward and say this directly affects me. And then the court fight begins. Meanwhile, the president can continue to build while they fight it out.
Well, Department of
Justice
Justice
an injunction.
Did warn the White House. They said it's almost certain that it's going to be blocked by the courts, at least temporarily. The president says that he hopes to win on appeal.
And the other thing to remember is it's not just the border. The Democrats freak out everything this president does, but he is the president, and he feels that he is out to protect the country, and that's why in 3 hours he's going to say, I'm declaring a state of emergency, and I'm going to take those $8 billion to start building a wall.
All right, we are in New York City, right? We're in Manhattan.
I hope so.
If you go this way, if you go east, there's the East River, and on the other side of that is Long Island City. You'll see the Pepsi sign
really
there.
It's really growing big time.
It's really growing, and it's one subway stop over there, so a lot of people are moving over there. A lot of the young kids live there because it's a little less expensive than living in the city. And Amazon, that's where they wanted to put their big headquarters and bring 25,000 jobs to the area?
Just to start.
25,000 jobs for a new headquarters that would pay on average $150,000 per year. Now, keep in mind, here in New York...
That's the average salary?
The average salary. Wow. The anti-corporate activists got what they wanted, though, because yesterday Amazon said, look, we're getting too much heat from local politicians, state politicians, who have been critical about their tax breaks and the secrecy of negotiations. So we're going to pull out. And, we're going to devote more energies into our facilities in Nashville, which is close to Federal Express, and down in Washington, D.C., which is next to the Washington Post, which Mr. Bezos owns.
So you might have heard about this big contest to get a hub in your city. 200 cities competed for it. Because of that, New York City sweetened the pot. They gave tax breaks once this was built. They said you're going to love it here. They made sure that it was something that Amazon wanted to go. Because when you have a first-round draft pick or the fastest-growing company in the country, you want to do whatever it takes to get here. Now, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is among the high-profile politicians who staked their reputation on stopping Amazon because in her mind, she said we should use that $3 billion for other things. $3 billion in tax breaks doesn't mean you hold $3 billion. So she won. She actually believes that New York benefits by not bringing the fastest, most effective, the biggest company in the country to New York City. Listen to her.
I think it's incredible. I mean, it shows that everyday Americans still have the power to organize and fight for their communities, and they can have more say in this country than the richest man in the world. We were subsidizing those jobs. So for the city was paying for those jobs. So frankly, if we were willing to give Amazon if we were willing to give away $3 billion for this deal, we could invest those $3 billion in our district ourselves if we wanted to. We could hire out more teachers. We can fix our subways. We can put a lot of people to work for that money if we wanted to.
There's an expression, you got to spend money to make money.
We were going to make, it was $25 to $30 billion over the next 20 years. So what's $3 billion in tax breaks?
Do you know what that company would have done as it's spread out? And also with the tech sector,
Every state is fighting for Amazon. Every state is fighting for
Mark
this.
Thiessen was as apoplectic as you can imagine. He saw this win by a Democratic governor and Democratic mayor as they brought this business to New York City. Here's how he breaks it down.
Ocasio-Cortez is a wrecking ball inside the Democratic Party, and as a conservative, I'm sitting here with popcorn watching it happen. I mean, this was a deal that was negotiated by the Democratic governor of New York, the Democratic mayor of New York, sponsored by Democratic legislators, and she comes in, the newly elected Democratic socialist, and wrecks the deal and creates such a hostile environment to the point that Amazon said, we don't want to work in this environment, we're gone, and they took 25,000 jobs with them. And just to show you how economically illiterate she is, she said the city was paying for those jobs. There's no $3 billion. So literally, she doesn't understand that there's not $3 billion. And the lesson for America is, if you like this, you'll love the Green New Deal.
Amazon said, fine, I'm out of here then. I'm not going to work in a state where I don't have full support. We don't want this. The governor's furious. The Democratic Party is split in New York because the governor wanted that. That'd be a big win for him.
Well, and they were going to, Amazon was going to contribute to the infrastructure. They were going to build schools, and 25,000 people in this region were going to get $150,000 a year jobs. Now, those jobs are heading elsewhere.
Newark, New Jersey says, please bring it here. We need it. I understand it. Hey, listen, you have to understand something. Amazon's a first-round draft pick. You pay a lot for first-round draft picks and high-profile free agents. There's no difference. You have to make this good for Amazon.
All right. What do you think about it? Email us, friends@foxnews.com. Meanwhile, 7:12 here in New York City, DOJ officials had discussions about pushing the president out of office. Here with reaction to these revelations is Joe Concha, media reporter for The Hill and radio talk show host on WOR Radio. Joe, good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Steve.
You know, we are a little surprised there's not more outrage across the board when you look at what the #2 guy at the FBI admitted. We were sitting around trying to figure out how to get rid of the president of the United States. Had that happened during, let's say, the time of Barack Obama, I think that would have been a big story.
It would be the story, Steve. And I go through the New York Times. I go through the Washington Post today. I look at other major news outlets. The McCabe allegation. And remember, I don't like being in the if true crowd because he was fired for 3 ethics violations at the FBI. Right. He doesn't exactly have the highest credibility. Right. But if true, I would think this would be probably a co-story, top story, obviously, with the president possibly declaring a national emergency and the budget shutdown. But that shares 1 and 1A. Instead, at the Washington Post, they don't even really touch on this in their top 14 stories. Instead, the story says what it was like for Andrew McCabe to work with Trump and Sessions, a negative story, obviously. The point is that the fact that there was even a discussion, a plot that may have been tried to be hatched around wiring a deputy attorney general, around evoking the 25th Amendment to oust a sitting president because you want to say he's mentally incapable. This is something that Aaron Sorkin in the West Wing would say, no, that's a little too ridiculous. We can't go with that. Nobody would ever believe it.
Exactly. Why isn't it a bigger story elsewhere?
Why isn't it a bigger story elsewhere? Well, I think there's a couple of reasons for that, obviously, but mostly because of the fact that perhaps it's based in conjecture. I would hope that's the case. Or perhaps it's the case that people don't see this as a big deal, that they want to push the fact that, yes, of course, the president was mentally incapacitated. Why is that? Because Rod Rosenstein wrote a memo recommending that James Comey should be fired, that Democrats and Republicans alike said he should be fired. That's a reason why you want to go down a road to oust a sitting president. I would hope that when McCabe is interviewed, Steve, that he is pressed on this time and again. Why did you think you could possibly even get away with something like this? In a very negative tone the interviewer should have, but I have a feeling that's not going to happen.
You know, for the last 2 years, people on television have been talking about, well, Russia collusion. There was Russia collusion. Now we've heard from Richard Burr, the senator from the great state of North Carolina, that Senate Intel has seen no evidence of that. This turned out to be a story that MSNBC reported, and yet MRC, Media Research Center, said that the network newscast spent 0 minutes covering this particular story, which is crazy because they also say there were 2,202 minutes on the Russia scandal, 0 for the collusion report. This is a big story, you would think, right?
Particularly on the NBC side, Steve, and I'll be quick on this. If a story is reported on MSNBC by its news division, and then the NBC Nightly News, which is watched by anywhere from 8 to 10 million people a night, and you don't cover a story that your own network broke earlier that afternoon, that is the bias of omission. And that is the most insidious kind of bias that's out there, Steve, the kind that when you don't even hear about a story that absolutely should be your lead.
It is curious what's going on. Joe, thank you very much for joining us live.
All right. Have a good weekend.
All right, 7:20 now here in New York City. A major twist in the case of a Green Beret charged with killing a Taliban bomb maker. His lawyers now accusing the investigator of stolen valor. Could the charges now be dropped against that Green Berets case? Plus, sources tell Fox News Joe Biden is almost certain to run for president, but did he already miss his best chance? Two Democrats with a discussion coming up next.
Good Friday morning to you. Back with some headlines now. Police are debunking reports that an alleged attack on Empire actor Jussie Smollett was made up. A Chicago police official tweeting, quote, media reports about the Empire incident being a hoax are unconfirmed by case detectives. The ABC news station in Chicago claims multiple sources told them that police are looking into whether Smollett was staged a racist and homophobic attack last month because he was being written off the show. Empire producer 20th Century Fox denies the claims. Really interesting story that we will continue to follow there. And a Valentine's Day scare at a Georgia middle school. More than 20 students taken to the hospital after eating candy and snacks on Valentine's Day. Investigators now trying to figure out exactly what made the kids experience shortness of breath and other reactions. Police are also trying to figure out if there was intent to harm the kids. Let's look at your headlines. I will send it to you, Brian.
All right. Thanks, Jillian. Former Vice President Joe Biden is almost certain to run for president in 2020. Sources tell Fox News the timing of his announcement is still up in the air, but he's already reaching out to potential staffers and donors. But as the 2020 Democratic contenders keep growing, look at these numbers already, and the party moves to the left. Has Biden missed his shot, or is he so unique it could go right to victory? Let's talk to two people that might know, certainly have opinions. He's the author of Uncensored, My Life and Uncomfortable Conversations at the Intersections of Black and White America. Zachary R. Wood is here live. And Run for America co-founder David Bernstein is here. So has Joe David missed his chance because so many are off to the left where he tends to be center left?
Well, look, I think if Joe Biden wants to run for president, he better get in soon because he is missing it. I don't know if he's missed it already, but if he's not, he's about to do it because this field is shaping up, and it's shaping up to be a very far left field. And if he waits any longer, he's certainly not going to have any chance. And I just don't know if he's going to be too out of step, almost the Jeb Bush problem with the current rest of the liberal field.
You're nodding, Zach, because you also agree with David. It's gone far left.
It's gone far left. I agree that he has to decide soon. I do think, however, that if he decides to run, he's seasoned, he's charismatic, he's got the experience. The question for me is, does he have a message that can appeal to young voters?
And because he might not say it's affordable to have free college. He might not say I want to kill private insurance. He might not say I think private free preschool is necessary.
Yeah, because he's a serious politician who's been around Washington for a long time. He's seen these things. He's tried to do these things, and he knows you can't just promise people pie in the sky things and hope they'll all work out.
You sound like something I would say. I want you to see the polls right now. And if you look at its recognizability, it has so much to do with it, a year and a half out of the box. But according to the Morning Consult poll, Biden's on top by 7 over Sanders, who's also not in yet. Kamala Harris, 13, is she in. Elizabeth Warren has never stopped being in. Beto O'Rourke went to the border and rolled up his sleeves, so I think he might be in, but he's also thinking about the Senate. Cory Booker came in last week. Klobuchar will have a town hall shortly. Mike Bloomberg thinking about it. Sherrod Brown, I believe, is getting in. What do you read from that poll, Zach?
So, I mean, I think right now the question is going to be, Who's going to bring experience to the table? Who's going to have a message that's going to appeal to young voters? Who is dynamic and not just charismatic? And who understands the need to unite us around the values we have in common, because we're deeply divided right now.
But you missed the magic one. Who can beat Trump?
I think
Trump loves the left-wing candidates.
Right. I think if the Democrats want to win, they should go with someone who's not as far left-wing, but it seems to be where the base is going. And if you're Biden looking at the poll, you don't want to be the front runner at this stage, because this is a wide-open field.
So here is Joe Biden, and tell me if this is a type of soundbite that will help or hurt him.
I read in the New York Times today that that one of my problems is if I were to run for president, I like Republicans. Okay, well, bless me, Father, if I have sinned. But you know, from where I come from, I don't know how you get anything done. I don't know how you get anything done until we start talking to one another again.
That sounds exactly like an analyst. And that's like the type of candidate that sober people would like because they want to be effective. But will it work in a primary?
I think it can. I think Joe Biden understands that right now we need to recognize that we're in a hyper-partisan time, right? That you have to focus on what we have in common. And I think he understands that politics is a contact sport.
Real quick, David, I don't think President Obama is for it. I mean, he met with Beto O'Rourke. He has not said anything publicly. This is a guy that he worked with for 8 years.
Yeah.
So what is going on there?
Look, once people get the idea in their head that they want to run for president, it never leaves. And that's clearly the case for Joe Biden. People have told him he's missed his time, and he wants to do it this time. And he may just be a touch too late. Timing is everything in politics.
Right, and he's already lost twice. And that could scare a lot of people away. Yeah, all right, guys, it's going to be an interesting time. All right, and we'll see. It's the party of AOC these days anyway. All right, coming up straight ahead. Look at this story. Colin Kaepernick supporters say he just wants to play football. He just wants a chance. So why did he just say no? And President Trump just hours away from declaring a national emergency. But should he really sign that bill first? Pete Hegseth promises to walk onto our set just as I read his name.
This is the most visited monument, the iconic place to be in Washington and across the world.
You promised me a visit. Can we go?
Let's go.
All right. We're really going in?
We're really going in. And we're going to go down the stairs below the Lincoln Memorial. It's so grand, the public should see it too. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to go into the Grand Chamber. I'm going to show you some fascinating art. It's really a time capsule back to 1914 and 1922.
That is just one of the episodes on the brand new season of What Made America Great. Ryan Zinke, then Interior Secretary, brought me below the Lincoln Memorial.
Who sketched on the wall?
Those were the workers from 1910, and that was their idea of graffiti just of those days. They were asking me sketching their boss. It was pretty cool. That might be open to the public in a year or two. We go to St. Augustine this season. That's it. That is the first settlement in the history of the country. Everyone thinks it's Jamestown. Frontis Tavern in New York City we're going to go to. There I am at the Alamo. Frontis Tavern is where George Washington said goodbye to his officers after he won the Revolutionary War. Besides that, no big deal. And also Monticello. We go with Thomas Jefferson called home, but we also go through the slave path where he had slaves, and we go back into that history. So download it.
Right. We think we know these icons. Go to FoxNation.com. Learn more about Fox Nation if you are not part of the subscription service. And if you're not, you can start a free 7-day trial. We all have it. We all love it.
Yeah, and I hope you guys like it. Pete, I know you love it.
I love it. When are we going to get What Made Brian Kill Me Great?
Right, it's just too big. The app is not big enough because it's going to be too big.
We already know the answer to that.
Oh, maybe we already know the answer.
Hey, today, let's see, 2.5 hours from right now, the President of the United States is going to be in the Rose Garden. He's going to sign that big bill, which is not really a very good bill for him because it didn't give him as much money as he wanted, and then he's going to declare a national emergency. The hair is on fire, not only of a lot of Democrats, but some Republicans as well, saying this is a dangerous precedent. But if you've got the hand the president's got, what else does he have to do?
No, that's right. I heard you earlier in the program call the budget a stink bomb. I think that's
a stink bomb.
Almost generous. I mean, conservatives agree. This is a terrible, terrible budget. Yes, there's more money for ICE and for the Border Patrol, but tons of restrictions on where and how the wall can be built. There's de facto amnesty in there in certain places. Huge mandates. It ignores requests for more officers. bad budget, terrible budget, and really a resistance budget, if you will, doing everything they can to undermine the president's budget. Nancy Pelosi's fingerprints are all over that thing. Conservatives would hate what he's about to announce at 10 o'clock, if not for the national emergency, which says, I've got the prerogative, I'm going to keep it inside constitutional limits, I'm going to stay focused on the wall and security of our border, I'm going to find this money, a lot of which is confiscated from drugs, and from military construction, and use it to build the wall. So this is a great move by the president to do both of them.
Let me show you what some of the Democrats are saying. Ridiculous, closer to a dictatorship, abuse of power, temper tantrum. Do you think he's undermining the appropriations process?
No, I think Congress has undermined the appropriations process.
In what way? Just not giving him what he wanted?
He's tried and tried and tried and tried. He tried with Republicans who have ignored the will of the people. He's tried with Democrats. He's tried to shut down. He's tried making compromises. All the while, it's only gotten more difficult. If you believe, as he does, and as many people do, that we have a national emergency at our border that politicians are fundamentally unserious about, declare it and fund it. The money is there. The support will be there.
I would say two things. I didn't think it would be a great move to do the state of emergency in the beginning. But after the 35-day holdout, after the negotiation with the 17 bipartisan bicameral, after he sees what's in front of him, after he only gets hours to read it, knowing that the government is about to shut down in a matter of hours, he was going to throw this in the street. So this is, I tried, now I'm going to use these powers. And the president sincerely believes it is an emergency. So this is you don't have to expand your mind or take big leaps and bounds. He believes this is an emergency.
You're totally right. And it's not a knee-jerk reaction. I think you're where a lot of people were. I wasn't for a national emergency a while ago either. But once you see the obstruction and the resistance, he tried. This makes sense. And the precedent argument, listen, liberals and Democrats, if they had power, would do the same thing. There's also plenty of precedent for
Plus, there's an emergency on our southern border, whether it's humanitarian or drugs, and the president's going to make that case. Meanwhile, you were with us a couple of days ago reminding us of the story of Major Matt Goldstein, who is being accused of killing a bad guy the wrong way.
Yeah, a big new development in this case. Turns out the investigator in charge of his case has now been found guilty of stolen valor. Pretended to have a Purple Heart, pretended to have a combat action badge, pretended to graduate from multiple military schools. This is the Sergeant First Class who's been in charge with... He also faked being a part of a Special Forces unit and said he was stripped of it.
So you're saying if you can't trust him about that...
Yes, and that's what his lawyers are saying. So they're waiving the Article 32 hearing. They wanted to go straight to trial or have the charges dismissed.
How did they find out about all this?
His command found out. I mean, frauds get found out. So if you're walking around wearing a Purple Heart and a combat action badge, which means you were in combat, but he never was, imagine the irony. So Matt Goldstein kills a Taliban bomb maker. He's got a Silver Star. He's an absolute hero. He's being charged by a guy who didn't have the courage to do it.
Do what he did.
But faked it in the process. So we'll probably get some updates in the weekend on this case, and certainly a lot of big decisions for the Army.
Is this just alleged, or do you know?
Oh, this is confirmed. The Army is charging this Sergeant First Class with fraud.
And I know that Sean Gallagher, brother of Eddie Gallagher, is going to be joining you because that story of a special operator who's been jailed unjustly has moved too. There's more revelation.
Yes, you reminded me. There's an Iraqi general who's got new information on this. So on the weekend, we got Eddie Gallagher's brother, Tom Homan, Laura Trump, Michael Knowles, Dan Bongino, Jason Chaffetz, and Rick Reichmuth will be live at Daytona 500.
Fantastic.
As tradition would have it.
Is that tradition?
Yeah, he goes every year.
He has for a long time.
I don't know all the traditions. You guys need to start teaching.
You got it.
Laura Trump apparently wants the president to adopt a dog. You'll have to ask her about that.
I'm gonna make the argument of a cat.
Well, I heard the president say in one of his press events the other day he doesn't have time for a dog.
I think I would agree.
I don't think he would be the one
Dogs
walking
are a lot
the dog.
of work.
Right.
Well, he's got executive time. He could raise the dog.
Barron would walk it.
We will be watching you this weekend, Pete.
Okay, thank you guys.
Enjoy
Appreciate it.
All right. Meanwhile, it's time for some news, and Jillian joins us with news out of Dallas.
That's right. Good morning. Let's start with this. An officer for Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, the Vermont Independent, calling Omar as she faces backlash over controversial tweets, including one that suggested Israel supporters in Congress are being paid. Sanders, who is Jewish, says, quote, "We need to stand by our Muslim brothers and sisters." Omar has since apologized. Former 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick was reportedly given a chance to play football again, but his price tag was too high. According to an AP reporter, he wanted at least $20 million to play in the new league, the Alliance of American Football. All AAF players are being paid $250,000 over 3 years. Kaepernick hasn't played in the NFL since 2016, when he started kneeling during the national anthem. He has not commented on that report. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air star Alfonso Ribeiro's copyright for the Carlton dance is denied.
It's not unusual
You gotta love that, right? I mean, that dance is everything. The U.S. Copyright Office dismissing the actor's lawsuit against 2 video game makers for using the signature dance. The ruling says his moves in Carlton represent a simple dance routine instead of actual choreography, which has copy editing rights. He's also suing Epic Games for using the dance in Fortnite. Yeah, simple, not for many people, because I don't know if any of us could do that.
I could do
Maybe.
the split, but that's all I can do.
Janice could probably do it,
You could
though.
do that dance. Come
Well,
on.
it's
That's just this and this.
You make it sound so simple.
Oh, come on.
It's so hard.
Let's all do it together.
All right, let's
I
put a
don't
side by
think so.
side of Ainsley and Carlton.
It's the easiest. I mean, I am the worst dancer ever. We can all do that. And then you come.
Yeah, let's not. Thank
Okay.
you.
42 minutes after the top of the hour. It is Friday. We're having a little bit of fun here. Thanks so much, Jillian. As more states ease restrictions on late-term abortions, our next guest says the president's biggest battle might not be for the wall, but might be for the battle for life. Ralph Reed from the Faith and Freedom Coalition is coming up next.
Plus, coming up in the next hour of Fox and Friends, Geraldo Rivera joins us every Friday. Today, no exception. And Mark Stein. Got a busy.
President Trump has made the importance of protecting life a key issue.
We must build a culture that cherishes the dignity and sanctity of innocent human life. I am asking Congress to pass legislation to prohibit the late-term abortion of children who can feel pain in a mother's womb. Millions of innocent, beautiful babies are counting on us to protect them, and we will.
Our next guest says, from standing up for the unborn to his choices in judges, President Trump is the most pro-life president of his lifetime. The chairman of the Faith and Freedom Coalition, Ralph Reed, joins us now. Hey, Ralph, thank you so much for being with us.
Hey, Ainsley. Good to be with you. Good morning.
Good morning. So why do you think that? Why do you say that?
Well, you know, I think if you look at what President Trump has said and done, both as a candidate and as president, he walked into the Oval Office shortly after taking the oath of office, and he restored the Mexico City policy that was begun by Ronald Reagan that prohibits the use of tax dollars to take innocent human life overseas through family planning programs, UN programs. He has restored conscience rights for Christians and others of faith who under Obamacare were forced to violate their conscience and their faith by providing medical services like abortion that they objected to. He has appointed pro-life and strict constructionist judges, including